Hi, Steve Arterburn here. Welcome to Going Deeper with Steve Arterburn. So glad you're with me today. We're going through this little book, The 12 Gifts of Life Recovery. And today we're going to talk about the gift of character. So let me ask you a question. Are you trustworthy? I mean, if somebody entrusts a secret, do you keep it? If somebody loans you some money, do you pay it back? Are you trustworthy? If you say you're going someplace, is it definitely going to happen that you're there? Are you predictable? Are you consistent? All of these things go in to character. But there's nothing more valuable when it comes to character than honesty. So are you honest? You know, some people aren't honest with other people. They can't even be honest with themselves. So I've seen people that have been radically delivered from addiction, healed from disease or whatever, and then they think, great, it's done, everyth's in place. But no, you're not ever delivered into character or healed into character. To have character, you have to develop it. Somebody can't even teach you to have character, because after you're taught whatever you're taught, you've got a decision to make. Do I believe it? Do I follow it? Or do I ignore it? And when I hear the truth and then my behavior lines up with truth and I'm consistent in that choice, well, then I've got hope because I have character. Character is what leads to hope. And if you didn't see yesterday's program on hope, well, it all fits together. Now, what do we know about character? Well, one thing we know, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 15:33 that bad company corrupts character. So, if I'm living my life based on myths, falsehoods, lies, I'm not going to develop character. But I live my life based on the truth of the Bible, I've got hope for character. And then, if I'm taking this truth and hanging out with bad character people, it's not going to work. So I take this truth and then I find other people that have character. Now I've got hope that my character's going to grow. And so we know that bad people corrupt character. I mean, it's just so true. One of the great youth pastors I knew, he stood up on a chair, a tall chair, a bar stool chair, and he asked one of his students to come along. And then he reached his hand down and he grabbed the student's hand. And he said, "What are the chances that I'm going to be able to pull you, even though I'm an adult and I'm strong, that I'm going to be able to pull you up on to this stool and you stand with me up here?" Well, everybody was thinking the same thing, and the little guy said, "No, it's not very likely. In fact, it might even be impossible that you could do that." Youth worker said, "Yes." Then he asked this question: "I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, you've got my hand. What are the chances that you could get me off balance, pull, tug, push, and get me to fall off of this stool?" And little guy said, It's pretty strong that I could do that. And he said, okay, so the same way with hanging out with people that have crummy character. You're not going to lift them up. They're most likely going to pull you down. I mean, everything's kind of tilted in their direction. So we got to avoid people with negative, destructive, horrible character. Well, I tell you, I never forgot that. And I think it's a glaring example of why we need to watch out who we're hanging out with. And sometimes, you know who we're hanging out with? Our favorite YouTuber, who might be disrespectful, sarcastic in every way, or just valueless. So we have to be careful about that also. Here's something else that I know corrupts character, and that's simply desperation. If I'm desperate, if I allow myself to get in a place of desperation, I might be willing to do anything to get out of it. If I have character, I'm not going to get desperate. I might come to the end of myself and I might reach out for help from solid people. But what I've seen is sometimes a desperate person will develop a relationship with an evil person or a destructive person because they'd rather be in a relationship with something rather than nothing. They'd rather attach themselves to something sick than be alone. So we don't ever want to get into a desperate place because that's going to destroy character, and so does isolation. So how do we develop some character? Well, first of all, we have to decide, what are my values that are valuable? Is my value wasting time, hours and hours on screens? Well, then that's not going to be a character building value. But how about the value of just waking up and the value of asking God to help me make the most of whatever opportunity I have? God, help me to say no to the stuff that I need to say no to, and yes to the stuff that I need to say yes to. You know, when Solomon was growing up, when he was about 8 years old, I remember this conversation I had with my wife and me and Solomon. And we said, you know, there's a feeling part of the brain and there's a thinking part of the brain. And if we go through life and never stop long enough to let the thinking part of the brain kick in, we'll be always acting out of the feeling part of the brain. And when we act out of the feeling part of the brain, we can make some huge, huge mistakes just based on feelings. But if I'll take my time, if I'll stop, if I won't be impulsive, if I'll have the character to say, wait a minute, I might be able to take the time to engage the thinking part of my brain to say, ooh, that might feel good now, but there's some consequences later that I don't want to have to deal with. And then we explain this. If it takes this much time for the adult thinking brain to kick in, it takes this much time for the teenage thinking brain to kick in. So we can do a lot of damage by always acting on feelings, reacting because of feelings, versus think it through. A person of character takes their time, evaluates the upside, the downside, and then makes the decision. Now, if you want character, you need everything going for you that you can get. You need God going for you. You need supportive people going for you. You need values based on truth going for you. And when you have character, and this is tough as a teenager, of course, but it's also tough as an adult. When you have character, you're not trying to win a popularity contest. You've got one person you want to be popular with, and that's God. And you're trying to please God rather than be popular with the masses. So people of character are literally willing to stand up against the tide. Now, I can tell you there are a lot of folks that I went to high school with, but Tommy Davis is the one I remember. When everybody in Texas was drinking beer and riding around and doing wild things, Tommy Davis did not drink beer. His core value was, I'm just not going to do that, it's too risky. He didn't think it was evil for adults to drink. He sure knew that he wasn't old enough to legally do it, and so he just said no. I never forgot that about him. And he grew up to be a great man of character. So sometimes we think we're not being popular by making the strong decision, the right decision, when in reality, it might not be popular, but we might win the admiration contest. But a person of character is able to say no, and even if it's the most unpopular decision that they could possibly make. A person of character isn't thin-skinned. You're not at the mercy of people being nice to you. You know, in Take Your Life Back, we write about reactive living, where somebody can push my buttons, or I'm still reacting over something that happened years ago, and I've never gotten over it, and I'm still reacting to it. And so People might say, you're thin-skinned, or it's easy for you to be upset. Boy, that's a horrible way to live. Then the other thing is, if I have character, people are around me. I know the value of connection, and I am connected to other people. I have relationships. And in those relationships, I am trusted. People know that I'm a person of my word. I have to tell you, one thing that happened to me is I acquired an organization. New Life acquired an organization. And the people that ran that organization had gone into debt for this other group $1 million. And I could have acquired the organization and told those people, part of the deal here is you got to pay that back. Well, they would have never paid it back. So I took on that debt when I took on the organization. And I paid back every penny of that $1 million. At least the organization did. I got to tell you, that person who runs that organization has probably given me $85 million worth of public relations value, of people standing behind me because this person stands behind me because I did what I thought was the right thing. You have no idea the benefits when you make the sacrifice and you do the right thing. And maybe it's the thing that may cost you the most at the time, but it may be a bargain compared to the benefit that you receive over time. So there's a gift that comes from recovery, and it is absolutely the gift of character. Life is very, very difficult. I would say almost impossible when you don't have character. You're tossed about like a wave on the ocean. You have no direction. And you're really just kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop, the next horrible thing to happen when things come home, as they say, to roost. So I want to challenge you. Get a copy of this little book, The 12 Gifts of Life Recovery. Work the recovery program. Get a Life Recovery Bible and a workbook and go to work. And one of the things that's going to emerge is going to be character. Something else that's going to emerge, and we'll talk about that next time, is the gift of power. In recovery, we talk about powerlessness. I want to talk to you about power. And don't forget this. Send me an email at stevesocial@newlife.com. That's the email address. stevesocial@newlife.com. Ask for a Restoration Bible. Give us your name and address, and I'll send you one, no charge. It's a great gift. I want you to have it. Well, until next time, I'll see you right here again tomorrow on Going Deeper with Steve Arterburn. I hope you have a great day. If you need some help, it's 1-800-NEW-LIFE.